I'm Tiffany from Wex Photo Video, and today we are testing out street photography cameras to see which one is worth your money. Now obviously I'm going to win, and I am shooting on the Nikon Z which is an APS-C camera.
I'm going to be shooting on the Ricoh GR III.
And I've got the Fuji X-T5.
The Nikon Z has an interchangeable lens, so I'm currently shooting on a 50mm 1.8.
Now, I'm on a fixed lens, and this is actually an 18.3, but it's an equivalent to a 28mm.
And on Fuji, I've got the 23mm f1.4.
So we're going to be heading out in Shoreditch, and there are 4 themes that we have to take pictures under, so we can see who is the best photographer, which, as I mentioned, is me. So the first picture we have to take is a picture of a pigeon. Every street photographer has to be able to nail the pigeon shot.
Number 2 is street portraiture. We want to get a nice photo of someone doing something.
Number 3 is a bit of architecture, a bit of buildings, a bit of arty shots of the environment around us.
And finally, the theme that finishes the day is food, because our cameraman is obsessed with it, as am I. So we're going to get going, and obviously we're all competing with each other, so we're going to be given the exact same amount of time. So on your marks, ready.
So what they don't realise is when they talk about street photography, they don't really want to be in the way of anyone, or at least I want to be inconspicuous, which is where this is better. Because I don't want to run around with a big old camera and lens in someone's face. Obviously this is the win.
I'm going to win with this camera. I love the X-T5 because I have direct control over all of the settings directly on the body and lens. I learnt on film cameras, so I'm very used to having the aperture ring on the lens, dialing in the ISO, dialing in the shutter speed. It's a very natural way to work. It also means that when I'm cold, because my hands are starting to turn a little bit blue, I can still dial in all of the controls without having to fiddle with any buttons, or especially not touch any touch screens. So I'm going to love taking these pictures, exploring the town, and getting some cracking shots.
My strategy to win today is that I know that both of the guys like to take pictures from quite a wide distance. They tend to be looking for the perfect shot, and then they run out of time. So I am going to shoot low down. I'm probably going to shoot quite cropped in, and I'm also going to look for bokeh, because I think that bokeh around Christmas time makes pictures better. I've also cheekily put myself last, which means we're losing light. And for photographers, that is fantastic. So let's get cracking.
Pigeon! Pigeon! Actually finding a pigeon.
Tiffany has a pretty good pigeon photography game, and I'm not above bending the rules slightly, so I bought some breadcrumbs.
Don't run away. Come here.
So I've kind of spotted my victim. The only problem is there's only a couple of pigeons, and the backdrop could be better. It moved.
Well, I've got a pigeon. I think it's going to be the easiest one to get. Don't look like a pigeon.
How are we at a park in London and it is entirely pigeon-free? My plans, they've all come to nothing.
Got it. I feel so bad. I feel so bad, but it's fine.
We've got some nice kind of graffiti background. You interested in those crumbs? Yeah, we got a customer. I'm
gonna win so hard. I'm so gonna win. I'm really cocky and I'm kind of okay with it, you know?
He's walking so determinedly. No, don't turn away. Mate, there's so much bread here.
Look at me. Pow, pow. So easy. It's not a faff. Fits in the pocket rather than the bag, you know? At some point they're gonna go, oh, I'll put this away. I'm gonna go, oh, let me just turn it off and put it in my pocket again. Great.
I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I'm on a much tighter lens than everyone else, because mine's the equivalent of an 85. So we'll see what happens, but I might have to do a little bit of cropping and cheat.
Building. Thing is, when I've got this, no one's gonna tell me to buzz off because I don't look like a pro or someone who's gonna wind people up. Just look, it's like a little point and shoot.
Right, I've just seen some clouds flying in front of those nice skyscrapers back there. And so I'm going to jump on some street furniture, which I always like doing when I'm shooting, climbing on things, try to get some different angles, and we'll see what we can get. I'll tell you what, it was a better angle when I was back there.
See, this is the disadvantage of being on a prime. It's just not quite wide enough Don't do this at home, it's dangerous. One more. Got it. Do as I say, not what I do.
I do wish I had a longer lens.
If I come back too far, then the plane tree gets in the way, so I just want the glass frontage and the brickwork. And I'm being a little bit nervous because I've been asked about counter-terrorism while I'm taking pictures, so we're going to clear off from here.
I find that often the great thing about street photography briefs is that they're quite flexible. And so a lot of people think that like building means building. But actually there's a really beautiful inside of an empty building here, and you can kind of see all the way through. So the light's giving us a lot of opportunity to get like quite an artsy shot, which isn't usually my style, but actually could give me an edge here.
I know what we can do for a little portrait. I don't really like to bother people when they're out. Maybe we just find a bus. Get a photo of everyone on the bus. Just looks like I'm a regular old Joe tourist with this, so no one will care.
You take a little step that way. Love it. Oh, they're looking good, man. Have to get over that internal awkwardness of asking people for a photo. I mean, it's daunting, and people will say no, and you just have to be like, oh, okay, fine, that person said no. But that guy was lovely. Really glad.
There's a lot of bokeh here, so it's actually quite a nice shot because you have the reflections from the lights, and then you also sometimes they steam people's beards. And so you get like a shot with the bokeh and the steam, which is really nice. There it was, got it. You walk away like nothing happened. What picture? I don't know.
I definitely am going to have to go in and explain what we're doing this for. Otherwise I'm just taking a picture of mother and daughter who are just picking some Turkish delight. A certain amount of social responsibility I think we should show as a company.
So sometimes with street photography, it's a bit of a set and wait game. So my strategy, just as a photographer, not during this competition, is that I'll often find something that I really like the look of, and then I'll wait for someone to walk past that I think fits within like what I was thinking. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So sometimes you'll wait half an hour and there isn't anyone that walks past. Sometimes you get really lucky and they do. So that would be like my final tip, I think, for street photographers, is that sometimes it is a little bit of a patience game. You don't always see like a beautiful shot immediately. So yeah, just be patient and see what you can do. That's the one.
Am I all right to take a photo? Can I just take a couple of photos? Yeah. Oh, cheers. Their advantage is, you know, they've got a camera with buttons and dials that will let them do things super quickly, super efficiently, but I don't want to faff about. You know, I've had enough in my life with faff. At one point I was a faffer, not anymore.
Food's always a really tough one because like you really want it to be a bit darker, like a bit of low light. See, for this I sort of want a classic, and I don't know if I'm gonna get a classic. Sometimes for filmmaking it's a different story, but for photography a lot of the time low light can be your friend.
Pigeons are quite hard to get on such a wide lens, but I think we hit the brief pretty decently, much better than what they're going to come up with. And I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh well, mine's got the nice depth of field, and it's not about that. It's about the moment, what you can get at the time, where you're just like, pow, pow, I've won.
I hope my breadcrumbs trick with the pigeons paid off. It's been a good adventure. The X-T5 has been a reliable workhorse for it. It's an absolute champ. Tiffany's pretty strong on her pigeon photography, so we'll see how we settle up at the end.
We've just finished for the day. I obviously got the best pictures, which you'll have seen on the screen anyway.
Incorrect.
Now we're going to sit down and just talk about the pros and cons of each camera, because I think what's really important when you're looking at buying a camera is that it's the right camera for you. There isn't really a best camera, and we get asked that question quite a lot. You know, which camera is the best camera on the market? The truth is they're all really good. First category is weight and size. So I would say this is like a very middle ground. It's pretty light. It definitely is very transportable depending on the lens you put on it. I found it very manageable throughout the day, but there is no grip, and actually that's really annoying for me. You can buy a separate grip, but then you add money to it.
I mean, the X-T5 I think is the heavier camera of the set that we're testing out, but I love it. I mean, it's solid, it's robust, it's got a good grip on the fingers, it's got a good thumb grip here. I could have it like dangling by my side. I know that I'm not going to drop it at any point. I'm very comfortable holding it all the time. So yeah, X-T5, not a winner in the weight category, but in ergonomics, absolutely fantastic.
The lighter, the smaller of the three. As I've said when we were walking around, very pocketable, and I think that kind of lends itself to the travelability. So, you know, I could just have this in my pocket, all of a sudden, oh, there's something cool there, click, I can take a photo. As I've said before, it's unobstructive, and it's just really a simple solution for just a point and shoot for decent photos.
Actually, for me, this is like a really big point of contention, because yes, that is more travelable and definitely weighs less, but this barely weighs anything anyway. I mean, if you ever shot on like an R5, that's a definition of difficult to travel with. So I would say, like, even the X-T5, which is the heaviest one, they're all still very travelable, depending on what lens you put on. So that brings me on to my good point, which is the one thing your camera can't do, which is flexibility. Because I can put on any lens I want on this camera, and I will be able to use zooms and primes. I can use 70 to 200 if I'm looking for a street protest shot. I can also switch to a 50mm if I want to kind of channel my inner Cartier-Bresson.
Especially for the portrait challenge, too wide for me for that particular shot. But I feel like my building shot especially is really where it shined. And just when we were doing the food, I had someone pulling pork, and it wasn't a faff to get in there and just get my camera over and take a photo. So I guess it's a trade-off.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting point, because whilst I love the flexibility of being able to change lenses, stuck on a 50mm today, I actually really struggled with the building shot because I didn't have enough space. That might be because I tend to shoot portrait.
That's interesting. So I had the opposite problem, is that I wished for my building shot that I'd had a longer shot. The first shot that I saw, which was like skyscrapers and kind of older warehousey brickwork, only would work if I'd had like an 85 plus lens. So I kind of, for that, I wish I'd had a 70 to 200. But the pigeons as well, actually, I wish I'd had a longer lens on it. So yeah.
And actually, that's a really good point about brands. So in terms of Nikon, you have a lot of third-party lenses, and so you can pick up an affordable 70-200, whereas for Fujifilm, the options are more limited. They're not completely limited, but they're more limited.
So for image quality, I reckon I've got a winner here. The X-T5 sensor technology is, I think, far and away ahead of the ZFC and the Ricoh compact. Added to the fact that you can add any lens that you like to it, the Fuji sensor is by a long shot the winner for me.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
And whilst
thank you for conceding my victory.
That's,
enjoy that. Yeah.
Whilst that theoretically is true, does that not take away from your experience of just going anywhere, doing anything, not worrying about whether or not the grass is greener? You get a decent image quality out of this regardless.
For sure, and I think there's something, if you're pushing for the best sensor, I don't necessarily think that street is what you're pushing for the best sensor on. If you were an architectural photographer, if you were doing landscapes, then you'd be using this much more critically. Street photography, much more in the moment. I think the composition wins over the sensor quality. I think if you've got a camera that has a fixed lens, you're shooting with those limitations, and then you can respond. Either you can see that you've got the shot or you haven't, and that gives you that luxury. I think with any interchangeable lens camera, you can choose whatever lens you think is the best for the scene, and you can wait and you can make your shot and you can make your picture. It turns it into more of a waiting game, less spontaneous, unless of course you're out with one lens, in which case you're in exactly the same position.
So obviously the Nikon ZFC fits in the middle of these two cameras. So quality-wise, it is good. I think there's a couple of things actually that I would say these two cameras have an advantage of. There's also one very, very big downside to these two cameras compared to yours. These cameras have a lot more functionality and flexibility on them than that camera does. There's a lot more options. For example, like my pigeon shot, which you'll have seen earlier, like I definitely leaned into burst mode, which will be significantly better on these cameras than it will be on yours. That being said, the price point is a huge, huge disadvantage.
With these cameras, you're buying into a system. With the Ricoh, you're buying a camera and lens, and it's, you know, you pay your money, you've made your choice, that's it.
Yeah, and like you can point and shoot with this straight away for £800. Body only for the Nikon ZFC is well over £1,000. Then you have to factor in the lens/lenses. And for the X-T5, you're looking at well over £3,000 for a full kit. So I think one of the big things about these cameras, especially mine and Johnny's camera, is that as a person who loves taking photographs and has probably become a bit too obsessed with it, I love having a lot of lenses. And at a bare minimum, I would always carry a 50mm and a 70-200. The problem with that is it comes with a really big, hefty price point. And unless you're doing it for a reason, it isn't worth it. So if you're selling pictures, you're promoting pictures, you're really into photography, it's completely worth it.
Yeah, I guess so. There's been times where I've taken these sort of cameras out and about on holidays and when I've been traveling, and yeah, it's good, but also it's kind of stopped me from taking photos a few times. I feel like because this has, you know, a decent lens, the aperture's 2.8, so you get a nice depth of field. It's a decent sensor size, it's APS-C. I feel like its pocketability makes it well worth the asking price, because I would have no hesitation taking this out when I'm out and about and snapping a few photos. With these, sometimes, you know, I probably care a little bit too much about what's going on, how people think, how I look. With this, I feel like I blend in a lot more.
It's very worth saying if you're a photographer that's new to the industry, or you're somebody looking to shoot something for a bit of fun with your friends, the price really is one of the most important factors. And I have met photographers on cameras that are 15 years old that can out-photograph somebody on a mirrorless brand new body that costs them £7,000. And so for me, like a big factor of buying a camera is what are you doing and what are you aiming for, before you even get into how many megapixels it has and what lens it's got on it.
Hope you've enjoyed kind of watching us pit each system against each other. Hopefully, if you've been thinking about different systems, or you know, just watching this for entertainment, you've had a good time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.